I'm Tiffany,
And I'm Kelly.
and we're your revenue insiders here today to talk about one of the most underdeveloped roles in go to market. Kelly, what role would you say that is?
Frontline sales leader.
That's it. Frontline sales leader. I mean, I think you and I have had so many conversations on this one, and we both are hands down agreed. Most underdeveloped role in go to market for sure. Why do you think that is?
I think it's actually pretty simple. It's because we're promoting our really strong AEs and account managers into these manager roles. And we assume because they're really good at selling and have shown success that they'll just naturally fall into this leadership role and know what to do.
I mean, this is true of a lot of roles, right? Your first line leaders in most organizations are the like super doers that are really good at their job and all of a sudden need to lead. But I've done a number of engagements with different like sales leaders across my career where you talk about this syndrome of super rep, where
Yes.
specifically sellers who are really good at their job, when they become a manager, not only do they think they should be a super rep, but often they're rewarded for being a super rep across the organization.
Yeah, you've spent your entire career chasing a number individually. Obviously, if you're good at your job, you know how to work as a team. But when you get that new, number that's 8 times bigger than the number you're used to carrying, you're a doer. So you're just going to go tackle it. And at that point, you don't know how to delegate. You don't know how to coach typically. And you don't even know how to plan your business, because planning a business at a number that's 8 times larger than what you've typically worked is just a drastically different concept.
And people start to burn out because all of a sudden you're making less money on every
Yeah.
deal, but you're putting in the same amount of energy that you were as an individual seller. You're on every single call, you're jumping into every conversation, and people burn out of this frontline leader. People who could be great sales leaders like are often burning out. And I think it's such a disservice that so many companies don't pay enough attention to drive their frontline sellers to like true leaders and really optimize what they're getting from like their enablement team, from their ops team, from a quota management perspective. They're not getting enough out of it and they're losing the good sellers along the way because they're promoting them and burning them out.
I would compare this to what you see, different, but also comparatively to what you see in healthcare when a doctor goes
Mm,
through a residency and an internship and they're expected to work these really long hours. And we ask, why do you do this? We know this isn't healthy. We know this isn't a great learning environment. And they said, well, I figured it out. I had to do it. So let's continue to do it. And I think that's what happens in sales leadership. The next generation, those second line leaders are like, well, I figured it out. They'll figure it out. If they're good, they'll figure it out.
yeah.
And we need to accept that we're working at different paces than we've ever worked before. There is no
Yeah.
slowing down. And you can't afford to not invest in your sales leadership anymore, your frontline leaders. You literally cannot afford, because if they are out there being the super rep, it means that they're maybe going to hit a fourth of their
Yeah.
number, but they cannot be coverage for 8 individuals. A, they're going to burn out, and B, they cannot focus on the deals like they used to as an individual rep.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen across my own career is when you take a really good seller, they're hyper focused on their quota, and you want them to be. When you design a good comp plan, a good model, like that is what they care about. That's the design. But when you move into a frontline manager and you're still just managing to quota, that's where it fails. That's where you feel like you have to be the super rep. I'm curious because you do a lot of these coaching engagements. What should people be focused on as a frontline sales manager if it's not just quota?
That's a big question, but
There's a
part
lot.
of it is thinking about, how do you manage your business? So as a frontline leader, you're the CEO of the territory or team that you manage, and you have to plan that business appropriately. So first is understanding who's on your team.
Mm.
How do you calibrate them? What are their strengths? Where do they need help? Where do they need coaching? Then you have to look at, okay, great, those are the people. Then you have to look at the pipeline. Do we
Yeah.
have enough pipeline to hit our number? And as a leader, while you could hope for 100% retainment of those individuals, it's not the world we live in. People will leave, even great people, even if you're a great leader.
Yeah.
And so, how do you ensure you have coverage to hit your number, knowing that things are going to be fluid within the organization? And so, no, you're no longer just managing to quota. You have to look at things like pipeline. You have to look at skills and capabilities of your team. And you have to think about processes different.
Mm.
So, as a rep, especially a good rep, you're used to raising your hand and saying, this process doesn't work, someone fix it. And the business jumps and they fix it because you're the top selling rep. When you are a frontline leader, you cannot complain in the same way. You have to carry yourself in a different way. You have to play the politics a little bit differently. You have to think about what is best for the overall organization and your overall team, not just you as an individual. And I often find that some of those behaviors are carried forward and just put the entire organization at risk.
Yeah. Again, a lot of things that are true for multiple leaders when they move into the first time role, but I think magnified for sales in a lot of ways. But this concept of like moving from wearing your own hat to not just the hat for your team, but you need to start thinking about the whole company. You need to
Yeah,
think about like how your team is contributing to the goals. And I think as a leader, you start to become a partner to other cross functional organizations. Maybe frontline, it's just within the go to market org and it's product leaders, marketing leaders, ops and enablement leaders. And you can't just be the complainer that you have been, right? You naturally people complain about what they're given, what doesn't work. And when you move into a frontline leader and all you do is create an echo chamber for your
yeah.
team, they love it. You're reinforcing that like you get it too. You were in the trenches. Like, yes, this is awful, but you're not solving those problems. Like you're just enabling people to wallow in them. And that shift, I think, of not just doing all the things that you describe, but also putting on that like broader company team hat is so important as you develop in that role.
The other piece that I think is so much harder when you move from an AE to a frontline leader is prioritization.
Mm,
And so when you are a rep and you're working a territory or a segment, you can somewhat prioritize because you know that you need pipeline to close deals, but you also know you need to close whatever deals and you need to work some big deals and some small deals and you understand your business. But as a frontline leader, you have to think about prioritization. So there are some things that are broken and that you're going to need to go advocate to fix for your team, but it can't be all of them. So how do you prioritize what you're asking for? What will make the biggest impact? And then not only that, how are you prioritizing your time as a leader? So
hmm
who are you spending time with? What accounts are you spending time with? Where are you spending time? Are you spending time on coaching? Are you just directing? Are you teaching? All of those things um, that there isn't a true playbook for today.
Yeah. And I I'm curious, like, if you've done any of this work. I've done a little bit of it, but shadowed frontline leaders and seen where they're truly spending their time across the things that you just labeled. Because I think people say they're spending their time in one of those areas, but in actuality, it's probably in others. Have you done any of that shadow work?
It really, yes, absolutely. And it really depends on the organization. What I'm seeing more and more of trending is servant leadership, which is wonderful, except it can go too far.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is when I shadow these frontline leaders, they are spending all day firefighting. But instead of teaching their team to fish and how to solve these problems on their own, they're just in firefight mode
Mm-hmm.
constantly. And their team loves them because their team comes to them and they go fix and solve the problem. But that never stops. That's a cycle that's never going to stop. And so I find most frontline leaders today are spending their time on whatever fire drill leadership just gave them. And it's a fire drill because they don't have a good cadence on how to manage their team. They are spending way too much time on deals they shouldn't be on. Instead, they should be helping the team prep for those calls
Hmm.
and only showing up where they're needed. And then they spend way too much time firefighting, where they should be advocating for a process change or helping the team figure out how to do this better or in a
Yeah.
different way.
I think the next layer you move on to, from my experience, is you then start to get better at understanding coaching and you start to like figure out that like learning to fish. But the pitfall that I've seen in that next phase of leadership is then you're coaching your bottom 20%. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, in theory, you shouldn't do that, or someone's told you that. Like you should spend all of your time, you know, you should spend less time with your top performers and then all your time with kind of your B players who can be like either elevated up or managed out. And then you shouldn't spend a lot of time with the people who need to be managed out or have accountability or be really thoughtful about it. But because you still have this super rep like thought process and you know they're doing it wrong, you know how to do it better than they are. I've seen a lot of leaders fall in this trap where they get into coaching and teaching to fish, but then they just spend all of their time with the team members that aren't going to perform.
Yeah, there's, I think, two big problems with that. First is my recommendation is that you spend time with what I call the frozen middle. I did not make up that term. I learned that term at High Spot, but it is the individuals that are in, it's your
Mhm.
middle performers that with some clear coaching can get to be a top performer. There's a
Yeah.
path there and there's the will to get there. Bottom performers are ones that you should be thinking about how you manage out of the business, and you need to figure out if this is a will issue, you can't change someone's will. If it's a skill issue, then you should be thinking about skill and how you improve that
Yeah.
skill. But the second issue is that frontline leaders, because you're so good at what you do, you don't know why you do it well. It's
Yeah.
really hard to explain why
Yeah.
you are doing something well or how you build pipeline. And so you say, go make more calls. Not helpful. Not helpful at all. Go send more emails. I need you to grow your pipeline by 5%. Not helpful.
Yeah.
It's the I do. Let me show you how I do it. It's the we do. Let's do this together. And then it's the you do. You cannot just tell someone to go do something and expect them to do it.
Yeah.
They
I
have
love
to know
that.
what good looks like.
I love that framework, the I do, we do, you do, and I think that's such a basic framework in a management capacity, but you forget it all the time that like that's the modeling that's necessary. I I also I love the concept of frozen middle. I haven't heard you use that term before. I've always called them like your B players is like what I've always referred to, but really the same concept. But I think like what you said in there, that nugget is gold. If you take one thing away, you're a sales leader listening right now. One thing you can do is start assessing skill versus will. And that gives
Mhm.
you so much leverage in understanding your team's ability and where you should spend time versus where you actually need to manage out. Because you can have a heart to heart on will and like can they get there and change their mind, but if the will isn't there, I am always quick in every role I've been in like time to move on. Like let's not make this breakup harder than it needs to be. If you don't have the will, this isn't I can't give you there's not enough skills on the planet to change how you're interacting.
Yeah, and the one step I'd take the skill will just a little bit further is observation. And so
Mhm.
oftentimes we are thinking about skill and will as a person as a whole. They're a very skilled seller and they have
Oh,
really high will. But really, you should be thinking at it at a different level. How are they at discovery? Where's their will and where's their skill? But then you put them there, and I want you to ask yourself, where have I observed this? Do I
mm,
have examples? We've talked about this before, Tiffany. Is the most frustrating thing when someone says, you're
mhm.
not good at this. I need you to get better at this. And they cannot
Yeah.
give you an example of where you didn't do it well or where you could have done it better. And so if you're going to go do a skill will activity, do it at an individual skill level. Don't do it
Mm,
at the high level. And then make yourself write down the observation. And if you don't have the observation, That's a big clue that, hey, I need to go spend some time with this person. I need to go listen to a call recording. I need to
Yes.
actually coach. Let's do a call planning, see how they're setting up this up so that you have an understanding of what their skill is there.
Yeah, and you went exactly where I did, which is don't fall back into the trap of I have to be on every call they're on because I think that they might have a will issue or a skill issue. Use call recordings. Use the tools. Like this is where leveraging AI as a sales leader becomes really powerful in your coaching capabilities and really keeping you from having to be all places at once.
Yeah. And that's where I also love to use call prep time.
Mhm.
So we haven't talked about this, maybe we will, around what I think a frontline cadence should look like and what your week should look like. But when I think about your Tuesday, your Wednesday, and your Thursday, as a frontline leader, you should be spending time on a few calls where you're needed and they need to bring in a leader. But you should spend way more time with your team doing call prep. Okay, you've got a big call coming up. I'm not going to be on there, but let's make sure you're set up for success. That is where they're critically thinking. That's where you know they're prepared. And that's where you can coach to ensure they know they're going to be successful on that call. If you jump on that call and just talk over them, yeah, they'll see the way you did it, but they're not going to necessarily learn how to do it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's great one time to see and then to break it down
Indeed.
afterwards in the I do, we do, you do framework. But yeah, that can't be your answer every time. I'd love to get into this. We have not ever had a conversation on this, but I'd love to understand like what a frontline leader's cadence should look like. Because if you take a step back or from an ops perspective, I run a lot of like go to market cadences, but they're at the high level. They're not the
Mhm.
individual leader level. And when you think about a leader, right, they need to cover one-on-ones with their team because they need to do like broader coaching and development. They need to do forecasting with their teams. They need to do those call prep calls. Those you have an 8, 10, 15 person team a lot of times. Like that's your whole week like doing that. How do you recommend frontline leaders really balance their calendar? What does that look like?
So you have to work back from when you, as a frontline leader, are expected to
Mm,
forecast. So, one, you need to understand when are you expected to forecast and when are you expected to report on pipeline. So, those are the two things, the starting points. I think the perfect week looks like this. It will change based on the way your leadership rolls this out. When I work with clients, I tend to start, to your point, with this is what a frontline leader looks like. And then let's build up to what it looks like for SLT, sales leadership. And then what does it look like for when you need to report to the board or the CEO. So there's all these different pieces, but as a frontline leader, in a perfect world, if it works, I think of Monday as your forecast call and your
yeah.
pipeline call. So you have a call every Monday with your entire team. Don't do this individually. People need to learn from each other. I get so much pushback on this, but you really need to meet with your entire team. It's an hour-long call every Monday, and you go through a couple things. Here's my forecast. Here's what's in commit. Here's where I need help this week. And your job as a leader is to ask some of the hard questions to really dig a little bit deeper into what's happening in that person's forecast. Last 15 minutes of that call is pipeline. Okay, great. Here's where I am in pipeline as an individual rep, and here's what I'm doing this week to increase my pipeline. Here's my plan. It's not an in-depth review of your pipeline, but
Yeah.
it is a here's my plan so I don't spend all the time closing deals. I actually think about pipeline because people forget. They just do. And saying it out loud holds people accountable. The rest of your Monday is one on ones. This is where you're spending time with the team on, hey, in the forecast call, you mentioned your deal with Sony is struggling. Let's talk through what that looks like. How can I be of assistance? Where do you need help? Should we do a call? Do you have a call with them this week? Let's do a call prep call later this week.
Mhm.
That's where you spend your one on one. You are also potentially doing some skill coaching there, but sometimes that comes in a different place. And I'm going to talk about that in a second.
Okay.
So then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're going to have some probably calls with your leader as a frontline leader where you need to roll up forecast, typically Tuesday in a perfect world. And the rest of that time is held specifically for call prep, debriefs, strategic deal reviews, jumping on calls where necessary, working internally across silos to make sure processes are improved. You are in it Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then we get to Friday. Friday is where you have your team meeting.
Mm.
You're not doing forecast on this call. You're not doing pipeline. This is where you're investing in your team. You are, hey, enablement's running a program. Let's talk about what we learned. Where are we struggling? Where do we need help? You talk about some of the larger initiatives from the company. You bring in other team members to help. Like, let's bring in sales engineering. Let's learn about this new demo that we've got. Team meeting is really important, but it's different than your forecast call. So you've got that. Then later that day, this is where you do, that's for 3 weeks of the 4. 1 week is where you do call recordings. Everyone brings a call recording, you do a review, and you provide each other feedback. So important. It just makes it less scary because it's something you always do, and it's a great opportunity to learn from each other. And then the rest of your Friday is once a month with each of your reps. So you're only doing 2 or 3 of these every Friday because you're splitting your team out. You are doing in-depth pipeline reviews with your team.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about forecast. I am talking about things that are leads or early stage opportunities. And you are finding out what's converting, what's your velocity rate, what's your conversion rate between the different stages. Are you making enough calls? Are you making enough phone calls? Where are you struggling? And this is not a direction call. I'm not directing you on what to do. We are talking through where you're struggling, and then I'm going to know how to coach you to do that differently.
That's that's a full week
That's
for
a full
sure.
week,
Yeah.
but you have all of that protected time in the middle. And that's what we don't give our leaders today, because we've got calls all over the week, and you're spreading out your one-on-ones all week long, and you're distracted, and you're context switching. The protected time in the middle of the week is so important.
Yeah, I like that approach. There are some like obvious pitfalls that I've seen happen for people who try to do some semblance of that, right? Forecasting is a big one. Merging it into your team meeting, not talking about pipeline, not digging into any of your forecasts, just hearing what your team says their
Totally.
forecast is and what deals are in it, and you're writing it down so you can like repeat that back to the next layer of management. And I think the intentionality of like forecast is to like ask the tough questions, and team call is a separate one, is a huge change in how a lot of frontline leaders really run their teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I will say on the forecasting piece, and we could probably do a whole episode, we probably should do a whole episode on forecasting.
Yeah.
The thing that where this breaks is where you have a second line, third line leader who doesn't have a regular cadence for forecast, and they just
Wing
out of
it.
the blue, you wake up one morning and you've got a panicked email that I need the forecast today. And so my recommendation is, if you are a more senior leader, you need to set the expectation that I always will do forecast on Tuesday mornings with you all. And I'm not, unless there's some crazy board requirement,
Right.
I'm not going to ask you midweek. I'm not going to distract you. There are not going to be any fire drills. Like, you're going to show up. You're going to tell me this information. I'm going to ask you some hard questions, but like, let's not have people running around like crazy because I decided and I woke up one morning that I want to run a forecast call today.
Yeah. And I totally, and you see that happen all the time, like
All the time.
like all the way up to the CEO. Like, I
Yep.
need, what's the forecast? I want the latest, like not the stale one from 4 days ago. Like, bring me the latest. And that scramble does happen. I do think, though, I put my ops hat on always in all of these conversations, that the magic in what you're describing is when everyone's doing it, right? I think there's a lot of things as
Mm-hmm.
like a sales leader you can pick up and do out of like the things we're talking about right now, and you have control over, and you should if there are things that aren't running smoothly in these areas. But when the entire org adopts something like this, then you get the ops support that you need for some
Yep.
of those like in-depth data asks, because really you to do some of those like conversion rate analysis and to make sure you have the right tag set up in Gong or whatever tool you're using to get the call recordings you need like sent to you. And even enablement to get like some of the coaching and skills and understand what that is, having the whole org on board, make sure that that part of go to market is like marching alongside and supporting you, versus you then being the one that's like, hey, can I get this data? Hey, I need this information. Hey, can you run this report for me? I have a call tomorrow with my team. That then you're just like, that's kind of sliding that panic downhill a little bit.
I would take it one step further in that you also need marketing alignment.
Ooh,
So when you have marketing aligned to the go-to-market revenue cadences, marketing knows when they show up and they present to. And this is really important for a pipeline. So there's set meetings. Is it sometimes it's biweekly, sometimes it's monthly, where your sales leadership is coming to the table and your marketing leadership is coming to the table and saying, okay, here's what we're bringing in. Here's the SLAs that aren't being met because we know as salespeople we're not always great at SLAs. We get
yeah,
busy,
yeah.
but it's showing that, and then you can really quickly see as you look at different segments. Oh, we're falling behind in this segment, or we have too many big deals, not enough small deals, or we're actually not meeting our ICP, so something's happening here. But when you pull in marketing, there's a huge unlock that happens that the entire organization knows this is the cadence we operate on. This is where we know that there are times and places to have these meetings. And so instead of scrambling, we can say, next Tuesday, we have our pipeline call with marketing. Let's just talk about it then.
That call and our differences and experiences might lend us to have different points of views on the pipeline call. I have never worked anywhere where that call has run smoothly. That is a whole thing to unpack for sure at some point in the future because it becomes like a finger pointing exercise.
Totally.
And I do think that winding as a sales leader, right, thinking about what you have control over in that situation, doing the prep work and understanding your pipeline and not coming in and just responding to what marketing is presenting and like those missed SLAs. Like if you've done the work, then you have an opinion to come in and you can at least guide the conversation in a way that your goal is to be helpful for your team and really unlock what you believe is going on or learn new information from marketing about what else might be going on that you can bring back to your team to say, this is actually happening in the lead flow process or with this campaign. Does that change how we approach the pipeline issue we discussed in that forecast call?
Totally. One of the things I talk about in my coaching and sales leadership programs a lot is accountability. And
Mm,
that's exactly what you're talking about there,
yeah.
which is as a sales leader, I don't want marketing telling me that I didn't meet my SLAs. As a sales leader, I'm coming in, I own these SLAs, and I'm going to say, here's where we are in pipeline. Here's the reps that are behind. Here's the SLAs we didn't hit. Here's where we're hitting our SLAs. And it's scripted in a way that
Mhm.
you are accountable for your own metrics. And yes, where there is mismatch, that's where you're going to have some harder conversations. But you're coming in and saying, you're right. I'm the one who has to present this. It's on my dashboard. It's not marketing pointing the finger. I'm having to own it that, yep, we missed 4 of our SLAs.
We have talked a lot so far about what an ideal sales frontline leader should look like.
Yeah.
What is your unpopular opinion of how it's working right now in 2026 in our current go to market landscape?
So I can't remember which guest we talked about this with, but we're seeing a trend right now where there's assumption because of AI and AI
Mm,
coaching that sales leaders can take on a significantly more amount of reps. And that might be our future, but we are not there yet. And I think there's a huge risk to the business. One, you're asking, in the most case, untrained frontline leaders because they have not gone through a sales leadership program to take on more people and utilize AI in a way that they haven't been trained to use it. And really, your frontline leaders are your unlock to your business. And unpopular, I'm sure. I'm sure many CFOs would cringe when they hear this is I don't think we're ready for it. Please do not give your frontline leaders 15, 20 reps. We're just not there yet.
if anything, the coaching work that they now have to do is harder
Yeah.
because there is more skill, human element. We've talked a lot about engineered empathy and like some of these concepts of like people need to develop these skills of being very keyed in to their buyers and understanding the buying process from the customer perspective more than ever because the customer has so much information at their fingertips. And so if anything, their job is harder at an individual level.
Yeah.
I'm totally with you. I've been I've seen boards and CEOs and companies like start to push in this direction for sure. And it's dangerous. They're just not there. And but a lot of times they're not also using their time appropriately in like a cadence that you could describe. So that's where like you get this misconception like, well, they could just like tighten up. They don't need to be on every call and they'd have all this time and they can manage more team members.
But if they don't know how to do that, then you're not setting yourself up for success. And I think we're going to see a lot of burnout in frontline leadership. We already are, but I think we're going to see more of it as we just layer on more AEs to every team.
Yeah. So I want to leave RevOps team members with a question to ask themselves around sales leadership. I want you in a RevOps role to think about how you can lean in specifically to frontline leaders to figure out how you make them more efficient. You don't need to be an enablement to be concerned or care about how people are being developed. There's so much power in a RevOps role in holding the data and having broad visibility to tools and the go-to-market cadences that exist at all the levels that you can really step back and think, if I met with frontline leaders on a weekly basis, how could I lean in and support them? Because that is such an unlock across the organization when you make that group of individuals successful.
I love that question. That is wonderful. I would kind of expand on that and say for any go-to-market individual leader who's has moments of time when they're frustrated with frontline leaders, but they also believe in promoting with it from within, which I also do. I want you to ask yourself, like, what are we doing to support those amazing individuals who have given our company so much value as we move them into leadership? And are we supporting them in the way we should?
What is one question as a sales leader you should be thinking about walking away from listening to this?
Oh, there's so many. But one is, have you given your go-to-market team a cadence that allows for the space you need for your frontline leaders and your reps, frankly, to be successful?
I would say if I was sitting as a sales leader, especially a frontline leader right now, what is the one change that you could make this week on your own, right? Without needing to go to RevOps or to your next level of leadership? What's one change you could make and see how it changes your entire week? Because all it takes is one change at a time. You don't have to make these
Totally.
grand sweeping changes or convince the rest of the leadership team to move in a direction. And if it's working, then that can signal that maybe you do want to drive in that direction. Maybe it is a bigger change, but what's the one change you could make?
The one change is so simple. Look at your calendar right now and figure out what calls you were on.
Mm,
And instead of being on those calls, ask for a prep call.
I love it. Prep calls.
Prep calls. You do a couple prep calls, you get your team thinking differently. You're not needed as much because you are coaching via the prep call. Just make sure you're coaching, not directing on those prep calls.
Kelly, you are the master of all things sales, leadership, coaching. This was a great conversation. I've learned stuff from you, even in this, and we talk all the time. Where can other people learn more from you about frontline leader coaching, sales coaching, all of this expertise you have?
Oh, thank you. And I should state that the program I run is in partnership with Sarah Bedwell, and I know many of you who listen know her. But yes, come to the revenueinsiders.com. It's on the website. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. But we've got a great leadership program. It's about an 8-week program. We also do sales kickoffs or on-site events where we really focus on training your frontline leaders on what it looks like to be a frontline leader, and not just a people leader, but a sales leader.
Yeah. And Sarah's been on our podcast. She was one of our first guests. Was she our actual
I think she
first
was our
guest?
first guest.
I
Yeah,
think she was our first guest. So check way back in season 1. That's a great episode to listen to as well on sales leadership.
absolutely.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. And if you are not already following the Revenue Insiders on your favorite podcast app or YouTube, please like and subscribe so more people can find episodes like this.
Thanks, everyone.